Hello, everyone. This is Shasta Hensley with the Kentucky Department of Education's Office of Special Education and Early Learning. Thank you for joining us as we share the latest edition of our Fall Instructional Strategies webcast series. This webcast is a collaborative effort between the Kentucky Department of Education and the Kentucky Special Education Regional Cooperatives. Today's presenters come to us from our regional cooperative. Let's go ahead and let them introduce themselves and get started.
Hello everyone, welcome to Progress Monitoring in a Virtual Setting. Progress Monitoring helps us track student performance and determine the effectiveness of our instructional programming. Today we'll look at how to utilize Progress Monitoring to guide instructional decisions and make adjustments to special design instruction in a virtual setting. This webinar was developed by a task group from the Kentucky Special Education Cooperatives. 3 of us from the task group will be presenting information today. We value your input and we hope that you will provide feedback on the information presented by using the QR code that will be shown at the end of the presentation. My name is Denny Paul May and I'm a due process consultant from Kentucky Valley Education Cooperative in Hazard.
And I'm Laura Clark, a special education consultant with the Northern Kentucky Cooperative for Educational Services in Highland Heights, Kentucky.
And I'm John Looney, an educational consultant with Kentucky Educational Development Corporation in Ashland.
The primary resource that we will be referencing throughout this presentation is the guidance document for IEP development. It is one of the most influential resources that we have in Kentucky to guide the development of individual education programs. Progress monitoring tools are described in the methods of measurement and progress monitoring portions found on pages 44 and 45 and 66 and 69. It is strongly encouraged that you locate and download a copy of this document. Please note that the title of teacher is used throughout this presentation when discussing who will collect data. This term could be interchanged with the title of another service provider, such as speech-language pathologist or other adult working with the student to collect progress monitoring data. This flowchart can be used as a tool to facilitate progress monitoring, to use it as a guide as we move to a deeper understanding of progress monitoring in a virtual environment. Our essential question for the day is, are the methods of measurement that I was using in the classroom going to continue to be effective during virtual learning? The color-coded system used in the flowchart above will help you navigate the examples we will use today. Green means go. You're able to continue instruction and data collection as you would in person. Yellow cautions you to slow down, as this goal is going to need some extra considerations, and you will possibly need to adjust how you collect data for this goal. And finally, red means there's a problem with data collection on this goal. You will need to work through the guiding questions and examples to consider alternative ways to collect data. The key here is to ensure you're making a good faith effort, which goes hand in hand with documenting evidence of IEP implementation through progress monitoring data collection and using the data collected to inform specially designed instruction changes when needed. This chart and the guiding questions will be provided as a supplemental resource for use after this webcast. While the focus for today's content is on progress monitoring, I would like to take a moment to note that mode of delivery of instruction may differ from progress monitoring methods. Teachers may use a combination of synchronous or in real time and asynchronous, viewed at a later time, methods to provide services to students. For example, delivery of instruction accommodations may be provided through video conference. This would be synchronous. And indirect methods for data collection may be utilized to score a work sample at a later time through a secure file upload platform, and this would be known as asynchronous. The table shown on your screen provides suggestions for approaching the various methods of measurement in the context of virtual learning, with considerations for both technology-based and non-technology-based options. Please note this is not intended to be an exhaustive list. We will expand on these suggestions in the following slides. While it's important for us to make every effort to maintain the fidelity of progress monitoring data that we are collecting, there may be some situations where we move from synchronous to asynchronous avenues. An example of this might be if we're using a direct measure, but in the context of virtual learning, technology is not available, creating a barrier in continuing with this method. In this circumstance, we might need to utilize an asynchronous indirect measure. Though different, this data would be better than not getting any data at all. It's important to document these differences in order for proper analyzation of data to occur. We will talk with you more about documentation later in the presentation. For each method of measurement, we have broken the process for collecting progress monitoring virtually into 3 steps. Step 1 is to equip the student with the necessary materials and explicit directions in order to collect the progress monitoring data that is desired. Step 2 is to gather the data. Step 3 is to evaluate and analyze the student work product using the specific method of measurement found within the student's IEP goal. For asynchronous data collection, the teacher would set up a technology like maybe Flipgrid, Seesaw, or Adobe Spark to share the tool with the student and record the student completing the measure. Using Remind, you can send text messages to phone. In Flipgrid, you can set up prompts for students to record work. With a Google Classroom and Seesaw, you can create assignments for students to complete. Explain Everything, Screencastify, Screencast-O-Matic, Adobe Spark, and YouTube channels can be used for students to record themselves completing CBMs sent to them by their teachers. When plotting progress monitoring data points on your graph and analyzing the progress of your students, make sure you have noted how the monitoring data was collected that week and for a series of weeks. For example, Google Meet, phone call, with passage emailed to the student or parent's email. Remember that progress monitoring must still comply with KDE and district requirements. We also need to document changes to instruction based on the ongoing analysis of data. For example, on the graph above, Mark's measurable annual goal for reading comprehension is when given a second grade reading passage, Mark will answer 5 comprehension questions with 80% accuracy on 4 out of 5 occasions as measured by weekly teacher-made tests. On 9/20, we documented the first day of virtual learning. As we progress, monitored in the virtual setting, we were not seeing the gains evidenced prior to the change to virtual learning. As a result, we made an instructional change on 10/16 to add video models of fluent reading. This was noted on the graph with a vertical line. After the addition of the video models, Mark's progress increased and he was again making adequate progress to meet his measurable annual goal by the end of his IEP cycle. Documenting changes such as moving from in-person to virtual instruction or student life home changes such as the birth of a new sibling in the notes comment section of your progress monitoring graph with a supporting anecdotal note is important. To document a change in special design instruction, draw a vertical line on the graph at the appropriate date with a supporting anecdotal note in the comments notes section. Now, by visually representing instructional gaps and changes, both planned and unplanned, ARC members can readily use data to inform decisions regarding instructional response to changes in progress and to determine if there is a need for extended school year. When analyzing your progress monitoring data, you might want to consider the following questions to help analyze data collected during virtual learning. Was the initiation of virtual instruction noted in the progress monitoring data? What is different about the data in the virtual setting than when in person? Did the measurement have to change? What in the new situation can skew the data compared to school data collection? How does the data compare to previous data? Is it comparable? Do I need to make additional changes on student progress? Next, Laura is going to take us on a deeper dive into the 4 methods of measurement and some recommendations for ways you can collect progress monitoring data during virtual learning.
Thank you, Denny. The first method of measurement we're going to look at is curriculum-based measurement. If the student's IEP goal lists curriculum-based measures, or CBM, as the method of measurement, then a teacher may use technology to gather progress monitoring data. In using a CBM, the first step is to determine the technology you will use. If you have the opportunity for synchronous delivery of instruction, identify the platform you are going to use with the student. For example, if you are using Google Meet, you'll need to have the passage scanned so you can display it on the screen. If you're using a phone call, then you would want to send the CBM via email a few minutes prior to talking to the student. If you decide to share via email or in advance, it is important to provide instruction to the student and parent that the CBM should not be previewed prior to the time they complete it for monitoring. The second step is to gather the data. The approach to gathering data will depend on whether or not a behavior needs to be directly observed. Some CBMs require teachers to hear or see a student perform a skill. A few examples of CBMs that require direct observation of a student performing a skill are oral reading fluency probes, letter naming fluency, letter sound fluency, and phoneme segmentation fluency probes. CBMs that can be collected without direct observation of the student include math computation probes and math concepts and application. If direct observation is required, then data may be gathered in real time using a virtual platform with video and audio capabilities in order for you to hear and see a student perform a specific skill. You will observe and document the student's level of performance using the specified CBM probe. The third step is to evaluate and analyze the data. As data is entered into the student's progress monitoring graph, teachers should determine if students are making progress or not and determine if an adjustment in instruction is warranted within the confines of the current IEP. Adjustments to the student's current specially designed instruction could include providing more time, changing the duration of instruction, increasing intensity by adding strategies, fading supports, or adding a reinforcer. One example of a direct measure that would require the teacher to be able to hear the student reading a passage is an oral reading fluency probe. Note that an oral reading fluency probe can be captured in real time, or the student can record themselves reading and submit that recording to the teacher. Teachers have used platforms such as Flipgrid and Seesaw to assign a reading passage for the student to read. The teacher can provide direct instruction and directions to teach the student to record their reading passage, use a timer to stop reading at the specified time, and to capture the number of words per minute that they completed in the time limit. In this photo, the teacher is using a video platform for real-time recording. Note that she has a sample in front of her to record student accuracy and errors, and she is using her phone as a timer to ensure she uses this method of measurement with fidelity in terms of time limits. To watch the video of this teacher completing a CBM with her student, the link can be found in the resource document that will be shared at the end of the presentation. Let's look at another option for curriculum-based measures without technology. In this example, the teacher will provide paper copies of the curriculum-based measures probe to the student and their adult. When using a CBM math probe, be sure to only count the problem type or types that are included in the student's IEP goal. The probes may be sent home via email, mailed home, or sent with other materials, meals, or resources to the student's home. Keep in mind that in this case, the CBM must be sent with explicit instructions on what the adult in the home and the student must do in the proper sequence. Some CBMs require direct observation of a skill. Therefore, it is good to practice to check with the adult to see if they understand the directions and stress the importance of following the standardized directions as written, including documenting the time and date the CBM is collected. Again, it's also important to provide instructions to the student and adult that the CBM should not be previewed prior to the time they complete it for monitoring. Now, let's look at direct measures. Direct measures may be gathered using technology. For direct measures, the teacher must be able to see the student completing the work to collect the data. Some examples of direct measures include frequency count, event recording, time sampling, interval recording, duration recording, latency recording, and running record. Using a direct measure, step 1 is using technology to share the IEP goals circumstances with a student. For example, if the student's goal states, given whole group instruction and a series of questions to answer using a whiteboard, the teacher would need to collect data when the teacher is providing group instruction and asking questions for students to answer. In addition, the teacher would need to be able to see the student at work. So the student would need to have the ability to turn on his or her camera, and the teacher would need to be able to capture that student's camera on the screen to take data. There are several options for how a direct measure can be collected depending on the student's technology access. For example, during real-time or live collection of a direct measure, the teacher could use a platform such as Google Meet or Microsoft Teams. Using the share screen feature, the teacher would make the activity visible to the students on the screen. If the student is not able to complete the work in real time, with the teacher watching, the teacher might consider using a platform like Seesaw or Flipgrid. If this option is used, the teacher would need to send explicit instructions on how the student should complete the activity and record themselves engaged in the work that is happening for the teacher to view later. Step 2 is to gather the data using the system chosen through step 1. Step 3 is to evaluate and analyze the data using the direct measure progress monitoring tools identified within the student's IEP goal. See page 44 of the guidance document for IEP development for more ways to progress monitor using direct measures. In this example, technology was used to directly measure basic reading skills. The student used her school-provided device to record herself reading a book, uploaded the recording, and sent the recording to her special education teacher. The special education teacher used a running record tool to analyze the recording and later graphed the student's data. Notice the bit.ly found in step 1. It will link you to Kentucky sources for baseline and progress monitoring tools. Within that resource, you may find a running record as well as other tools to directly measure behavior. When considering ways to collect direct measures using technology while providing some form of instruction, one of the largest barriers is finding a technology that will allow the teacher to both share a screen with content information and see the student for whom you are collecting data. In the 2 tutorials linked on the screen, Eric Kurtz of Control-Alt-Achieve and Dan Spada with the EdTech Teacher share quick tutorials to demonstrate several options for sharing your screen and seeing your students at the same time. One option for teachers with only one screen is to use the Google Chrome extension Dual List, which allows you to split your screen to view students and the content at the same time. The key to a direct measure is to be able to see the students engage or not engage in the target behavior that is listed in the student's IEP goal. If the goal requires the student to interact in small groups or with peers during a social time, the teacher might have to set up some specific opportunities for groups of students to get together virtually and then facilitate and observe during these sessions. Some suggestions are hosting a Minecraft or Lego club, a group drawing session, watching short videos and then talking about them, or hosting a virtual dance party with students. Direct measures may also be collected without technology. In the case of non-technology direct measures, we may have to rely on other adults to collect the data as we will not be able to directly observe the student performing the targeted skills. If your school district is hosting any kind of pickup or drop-off service for families for academic materials, meals, or supplies from the Family Resource Center, Teachers can discuss with administrators if it is possible to partner with those services and have a trained person participate in the delivery or pickup. During that time, it might be possible to organize data collection, following CDC and district guidelines and the IEP goal requirements. If supplies are being dropped off by transportation staff, for example, possibly a bus monitor could be trained to collect needed data. Any type of collection of a direct measure will require strong collaboration with families and district administration, as well as careful training with any new adults who will be collecting the data. Next, John will share strategies for collecting indirect and authentic measures.
Thank you, Laura. Let's look at indirect measures and authentic assessment. Indirect measures provide a method for evaluating student performance using tools such as checklists or rubrics. This method is commonly used to measure student performance on writing tasks or other skills that do not require a direct observation of student behavior. Authentic assessment is used to measure student performance on tasks meant to simulate real-life situations. Practice interviews and portfolio projects are common examples of this type of measurement. It should be noted that due to the subjective nature of this content, authentic assessment must be paired with another method of measurement in order to make the performance measurable. For the purpose of this presentation, tools presented may be used for both indirect measurements and authentic assessments. If the student's IEP goal lists indirect measures or authentic assessment as the method of measurement, then a teacher may use technology to gather progress monitoring data. But remember, authentic assessments must be paired with another method of measurement. So let's look at a few examples of indirect measures and authentic assessments using technology. In this example, a reading comprehension passage, writing assignment, or a math task may be assigned to a student. The task would be completed by the student and sent back to the teacher. The completed work products may be collected into a portfolio. The teacher then evaluates and analyzes the student product using an indirect measurement tool such as a writing rubric or a checklist. Then the teacher graphs the data to see if the student is making progress and to make instructional adjustments as necessary. An example of authentic assessment could be to utilize a Google Drive or another online storage platform to collect writing samples or other student work to serve as a digital portfolio. You can also take a look at pages 44 through 45 of the guidance document for IEP development for descriptors of each method of measurement and for more examples. Indirect measures and authentic assessments may also be collected without technology. Teachers may provide paper copies of the indirect or authentic assessment probe to the student or adult at home. Make sure to check with your district's policies and procedures on sending materials to and from families. The probes, such as completing a reading response, a writing task, or a math probe, must be sent with explicit directions. It is also a good practice to check with the student or adult to ensure that they understand the directions. Once the student completes the assignment, it will be sent to the teacher. The teacher then scores and analyzes the student's work product using the method of measurement outlined in the IEP goal. Then the teacher graphs the data to measure progress and make instructional adjustments as needed. Many of the resources mentioned in today's webcast may be found by scanning the QR code on this slide or by entering the bit.ly link into your browser's navigation bar. We are using the web tool Wakelet as our resource library. While we take a moment for you to explore the link, let's talk about some of the resources you will find there. Along with the IEP guidance document, there's also a video demonstrating virtual data collection, several progress monitoring resources developed by the Kentucky Special Education Cooperatives, and additional links and documents to further support your data collection practices. Thank you for watching this session on virtual data collection and progress monitoring. Please remember to provide your feedback on this session using the QR code or bit.ly link on this slide. A recording of this session will be available on the Kentucky Dose Support website and the Kentucky Department of Education website in the Instructional Resources section. We would like to thank KDE and the Special Education Cooperative Networks for the opportunity to collaborate and share best practices. We would also like to thank you and all the educators in Kentucky for providing meaningful educational experiences for our students. Remember that the special educational cooperatives are here to support you. Please reach out to your respective region for additional supports or to share resources that you may have developed locally.